Ryan didn't even hesitate. Honestly, an intern could do this job. He said it out loud, in front of my team. 15 years of showing up before sunrise, of canceled vacations, of quietly keeping a system alive that no one else even understood. And this guy, freshly promoted and still smelling like overpriced cologne and bad decisions, reduced it to something an intern could do. The room went silent. Not awkward silence, heavy silence. The kind that presses against your chest. Someone shifted in their chair, then thought better of it. No one spoke, no one defended me, I didn't either. I just nodded, slow, calm, almost polite, before I tell you what happened next, and the moment that made the person who fired me panic in the middle of the night, go ahead and hit the like button. Because trust me, this story is just getting started. By the way, where are you watching from? What time is it there right now? Okay, now let's see what I'm going to do. I stood up, slid my badge across the table, and let it stop right in front of Ryan's laptop. The sound was soft, but in that room, it might as well have been a gunshot. No speech, no argument, no warning, just me walking out, behind me. I heard the faint scrape of my chair, and someone exhaling like they'd been holding their breath for too long. And then Ryan God. Of course, Ryan clapped his hands once, like he'd just finished a successful presentation. All right, he said. Already moving on. Let's get Melissa up to speed on Lyra's workflows. Should be straightforward. Melissa, the intern, 2 weeks in, still writing passwords on sticky notes. I didn't turn around, but I could picture her face wide-eyed, confused, already overwhelmed after shadowing me for barely 2 days. What Ryan didn't know, what no one in that room realized, was that the system he just handed off wasn't straightforward. It was a maze, undocumented, fragile, alive in ways only I understood. And he had just given it to someone who didn't even know where the entrance was. This story is fictional, inspired by real workplace situations, and enhanced with AI to make it more compelling. I believe you'll find meaningful lessons hidden within it. And now, let me continue the story. By the time I reached the parking lot, the noise of the office had already faded into something distant, like it belonged to another life. My phone buzzed in my hand, messages stacking up one after another, but I didn't check them. I already knew what they would say. Confusion, panic, maybe even a weak attempt at sympathy. I unlocked my car and sat there for a moment, hands resting on the steering wheel, staring straight ahead. Not angry, not even sad, just certain, because there was one thing I understood better than anyone in that building. The system they just handed off like it was a routine checklist item, it wasn't simple. It never had been. I built it piece by piece over the years. Not from a clean blueprint, but from fragments. Old vendor code stitched together with emergency patches. Temporary fixes that became permanent because no one ever came back to replace them. Every update layered on top of another, like bandages over something that refused to heal. There was no official documentation. No central guide, nothing you could just open and follow step by step. Everything lived in my head. I knew which modules would fail under pressure and which ones only looked broken but weren't. I knew which errors could be ignored and which ones were warnings disguised as noise. Timing mattered. Sequence mattered. Even the order of logins mattered, to anyone else. It was just a system, to me. It was unpredictable, temperamental, alive in its own strange way, like something you don't control, you manage, carefully, quietly, and the truth was, it didn't respond to authority or job titles or confidence. It responded to familiarity, to history, to me. I started the engine, finally pulling out of the lot, the building shrinking in my rearview mirror. They thought they could replace me in an afternoon. What they didn't realize was that they hadn't just lost an employee. They had lost the only person who knew how to keep that thing from turning on them. The house was quiet when I stepped inside. The kind of quiet that doesn't ask questions. I kicked off my shoes, set my bag down, and walked straight to my desk without turning on any lights. The glow of my personal laptop was enough. Not the company-issued one. I left that behind on purpose. This machine was mine. Always had been. I opened it, fingers moving without hesitation, muscle memory taking over where emotion didn't belong. Folder after folder, carefully organized over the years, waited exactly where I had left them. Private logs, backup scripts, access records, pieces of a system that was never supposed to exist outside corporate walls, but I knew better than to trust that. Click, drag, encrypt, save. The rhythm was steady, almost calming. I wasn't rushing. I didn't need to. This wasn't panic. It wasn't revenge either. Not in the way people imagine it. No dramatic gestures, no reckless moves, just preparation. Because I understood something they didn't. Systems like that don't fail all at once. They unravel, quietly, predictably, and when they do, people start asking questions. Questions that always lead back to the same place, to me. I pulled up the access history next, scanning through timestamps, confirmations, authentication trails. Everything was still intact, still tied to my credentials, my identity, my signature, exactly as it had always been. That mattered more than anyone in that office realized. I exported the records, secured them, then moved on to the next layer. There's a certain discipline you learn after years of being the one who fixes things no one else understands. You don't wait for the problem to explode. You prepare for the moment it does. And I could already feel it coming. Not chaos. Not yet. Just the beginning of absence. I leaned back for a second, watching the progress bar inch forward, listening to the faint hum of the drive. They thought the system could run without me. What they didn't understand was that it already had a way of proving them wrong. The final file finished exporting with a soft chime, the kind of quiet confirmation most people would ignore. I didn't. Moments like that matter. They tell you when a line has been crossed, even if no one else can see it yet. I closed the last folder and opened something I hadn't touched in months. My secure console. No company network, no shared access. Just a clean interface tied directly to the core system through a private channel I built years ago when things first started getting unstable. Back when no one else wanted to take responsibility for it. The login prompt appeared. I entered my credentials slowly, deliberately, like a ritual. Not because I needed to, but because I respected what I was about to do. The dashboard loaded, familiar and quiet. Everything still looked normal on the surface. Active processes running, logs updating, no alarms, no red flags. That was the illusion. I navigated through layers most people in that company didn't even know existed. Compliance core, authorization chain, custodian controls. There it was. Admin token Lyra Keller, status active, for 15 years. That line had never changed. I hovered for a moment, not hesitating, just acknowledging. Because once this was done, there was no undoing it without consequences. A prompt appeared when I selected the option. Warning: removing custodian token will initiate compliance lockdown sequence if no verified replacement is assigned within 36 hours. Exactly as I designed it. I clicked confirm. The screen flickered once, then refreshed. Admin token revoked. No alarms, no dramatic shutdown. The system didn't panic. It never did. It simply adjusted from the outside. Everything would still look functional. People could log in, click through dashboards, run basic tasks. It would give them just enough confidence to keep going. But underneath, something had shifted. A silent process had begun. A countdown. 36 hours? Not a threat. Not an attack. Just protocol. I leaned back, exhaling slowly, eyes resting on the now empty custodian field. They thought the system didn't need me. Now it would show them exactly what happens when the one thing holding it together disappears. Morning came like nothing had changed. Same building, same lights, same routines, pretending everything was under control. Inside, they gathered around the same conference table I had walked away from less than a day before. Ryan stood at the front, energy high, voice confident, like he had just solved a problem instead of creating one. "All right," he said, clapping once. Let's get things moving. Melissa, you'll take over Lyra's workflows. Daniel, support where needed. It's mostly routine. Melissa nodded, though her expression gave her away. She barely understood the system when I was there guiding her step by step. Now she was sitting alone in front of it, expected to run it like she had built it herself. She logged in. For a moment, everything looked fine. Dashboard loaded. Menus responded. The illusion held. Then the first crack appeared. I'm getting an error, she said quietly. It says token expired, custodian undefined. Daniel leaned over her shoulder, frowning. That's weird. Try refreshing. She did. Same message, another attempt. This time, the interface froze for a second before returning incomplete data. Logs missing. Sections blank. Ryan didn't even walk over. That's just legacy noise, he said. Dismissive. The system's old. It does that. Keep going. Keep going. Melissa swallowed and clicked deeper, trying to follow the steps she had scribbled down during those 2 days shadowing me. But the deeper she went, the less sense it made. Permissions denied. Access loops. Functions that opened but didn't execute. Ryan, I can't access the vault section, she said. Voice tighter now. Did you request access? Yes. But it says my role doesn't match historical signature. He sighed, already annoyed. Then escalated. This isn't complicated, except it was, because what they were seeing weren't random glitches. They were the system reacting exactly the way it was designed to, quietly resisting, refusing to recognize anyone who wasn't me. From the outside, it still looked operational, but inside, the structure had already started shifting, locking itself down piece by piece, and no one in that room understood that they weren't fixing a problem. They were walking straight into one that had already begun. By midday, the tone inside Orion Dynamics had shifted. Even if Ryan refused to hear it, what started as minor glitches was no longer staying contained at a single desk. It was spreading. Daniel escalated the issue to IT. IT escalated it to infrastructure, and by early afternoon, it landed exactly where it was always going to end up, on the desk of Victor Hale, the CTO. Victor wasn't the kind of man who panicked easily. He spoke in short sentences, trusted data more than people, and ignored anything that smelled like office drama. But the alert he received wasn't something you brushed off. Sync anomaly detected. Audit logs not verified. He opened the report, scanned the timestamps, then went back and read them again, more slowly. The system was still running, technically, but it had stopped communicating with the Federal Registry hours ago. Every attempt to sync was being rejected. That wasn't a bug. That was a failure of authority. Victor traced the issue deeper, following the chain through Vault 41, the same core I had maintained for years. What he found there made him stop completely. Custodian status undefined. Signature rejected. My name still sat on every verified record. No replacement listed, no transition approved. He didn't call a meeting. He walked straight to Ryan's office. You reassigned Lyra's system, Victor asked. Voice controlled but sharp. Ryan leaned back in his chair, unfazed. We're modernizing. The team's handling it. Victor turned his laptop around, pointing at the screen. We're not syncing with the federal system. Logs are being rejected. Ryan waved a hand. Temporary, legacy issues. Victor didn't blink. This has nothing to do with legacy. This is authorization. You removed the only valid signature tied to that system. For the first time. Ryan hesitated, but only for a second. She was an admin. We'll assign someone else. Victor stared at him. Expression flat. You don't assign a signature like that, he said quietly. Ryan didn't respond, because he still didn't understand, and the system wasn't waiting for him to catch up. If you think what I did was wrong for bringing the entire system to a halt, then feel free to comment wrong. But if you believe this outcome was deserved after everything Ryan Carter did, then say it loud. I'm satisfied. Sometimes consequences don't come from revenge. They come from the truth finally being revealed that night. The apartment felt different, not heavier, not lighter, just resolved. Like a decision had already been made long before I sat down at my desk again. I opened my laptop, not to check messages or scroll through the quiet chaos I knew was building back at Orion Dynamics, but to finish something I had already started. A draft email waited for me. Recipient already filled in. Adrian Voss, Federal Oversight Office. We had worked together for years, quietly, professionally. He didn't care about office politics or titles. He cared about one thing: compliance, accuracy, accountability. I respected that. I clicked into the body of the message and read the single line I had written earlier. Per custodial protocol, please see attached notice of role vacancy and transition status. No emotion, no explanation, just fact. I attached the document, a formal declaration, time-stamped and digitally signed. It confirmed what the system already knew, but had not yet been officially acknowledged. The custodian role was vacant. No reassignment, no authorized successor. Clean, precise, irreversible. I hovered over the send button for a moment, not hesitating, just recognizing what it meant, because once this was sent, there would be no ambiguity left. The system wouldn't just be unstable, it would be legally invalid. I clicked send. The message disappeared instantly, absorbed into a chain of processes far outside the control of anyone at Orion Dynamics. No alarms sounded, no immediate response came back, but I knew exactly what would happen next. The Oversight Office would log the notice, cross-reference it with active filings, and trigger a review. Not because they suspected wrongdoing, but because the rules required it. And those rules didn't bend for internal mistakes. I closed the laptop and leaned back, letting the silence settle around me. They thought the problem was technical. They were about to find out it wasn't. Wednesday didn't arrive quietly. It crept in with tension already hanging in the air, like everyone sensed something was wrong but couldn't yet explain it. At first, it was small things. Procurement tried to push through a routine contract renewal. The system flagged it, unauthorized. The request bounced back. They tried again. Same result. Finance attempted to process a batch approval tied to a federal account. Rejected. Compliance verification failed. By mid-morning, it wasn't isolated anymore. Emails started coming in. Not internal ones, the kind you can ignore or delay, but external, official, structured. Request for verification of current compliance officer. Unable to validate recent audit logs. Please confirm authorized custodian of record. Each message carried the same quiet implication. Something wasn't right. Inside Orion Dynamics, the mood shifted fast. Conversations dropped to whispers. Screens stayed open longer than usual. People staring at them like answers might appear if they waited long enough. Melissa sat at her workstation, shoulders tense, eyes locked on error messages that made less sense the longer she looked at them. She had stopped asking questions out loud, not because she understood, but because she didn't know where to start anymore. I'm getting blocked on everything, she finally said, voice tight. It won't let me verify anything. Ryan stood near the center of the room, arms crossed, still holding on to that same confidence. It's a transition issue, he said. Systems get messy during restructuring. Just keep pushing, keep pushing. But the system wasn't responding to effort. It was responding to absence. Every failed attempt tightened the lock. Every rejected action reinforced what had already been set in motion. By the afternoon, contracts were no longer just delayed. They were frozen. Entire workflows stalled mid-process, waiting for a verification that no longer existed. And still, Ryan refused to see it, because admitting the truth meant admitting something far worse than a mistake. It meant understanding that this wasn't a temporary disruption. It was the beginning of a collapse they no longer had control over. By Thursday morning, The illusion finally shattered. The conference room was packed, but no one spoke. Not really. People shifted in their seats, avoided eye contact, stared at laptops that no longer gave them answers. Even Ryan looked different now, less certain, more cornered. Then the door slammed open. Victor Hale stepped aside as another figure walked in behind him. Tall, rigid, carrying nothing but a thick folder and a look that made the entire room freeze. Elliot Hanley, CEO of Orion Dynamics. He didn't greet anyone, didn't sit. "Where is she?" The question cut through the room like a blade. Ryan stood halfway, trying to regain control. "If you're referring to Lyra Keller." She was part of the restructuring. Hanley slammed the folder onto the table. Papers shifted, one sliding forward just enough for everyone to see the red header stamped across it. Federal Contract Suspension Notice. The air changed instantly. "You restructured," Hanley repeated, voice low, controlled in a way that was far more dangerous than shouting. "The only person legally authorized to maintain our compliance system." Ryan opened his mouth. Closed it, tried again. "We reassigned her responsibilities." "Responsibilities," Hanley snapped, finally raising his voice. She wasn't just managing tasks. She was the custodian of record, the certified authority tied to every federal contract we hold. Silence. You could feel it now, understanding spreading. Slow and heavy. Hanley turned, scanning the room. "Do any of you know why that system never failed?" No one answered. Because she built it when our vendor collapsed. Because no one else could take it over. Because the government cleared her personally to maintain it. He looked back at Ryan. She wasn't replaceable. Ryan's voice came out thinner this time. "I didn't know." Hanley shook his head once. "You didn't ask." The words landed harder than anything else. In that moment, it stopped being about errors or systems or failed processes. It became something simpler. A decision made without understanding, finally revealing its cost. At exactly 9 a.m., it happened. No alarms, no dramatic shutdown. Just a single line of red text appearing across every active terminal inside Orion Dynamics. Authorization locked, custodian role vacant, all contract systems suspended under federal compliance protocol. And just like that, everything stopped. Finance dashboards froze mid-process. Procurement systems grayed out. Internal tools that had been running for years without interruption simply halted, not broken, not crashed, just denied, within minutes. Emails flooded in, official notices, government agencies placing contracts on hold, requests for immediate explanation, warnings of investigation, hundreds of millions in active agreements suspended. Inside the building, panic finally replaced denial. Meetings turned into damage control sessions. Legal scrambled for options that no longer existed. Ryan disappeared from sight entirely because there was nothing left to manage. Across town, I sat by the window of a quiet cafe, a cup of coffee cooling beside me. The morning light felt calm, almost indifferent to everything unfolding miles away. My phone buzzed once, then again. I didn't check. I didn't need to. They weren't calling for answers anymore. They were calling because they finally understood. I picked up the phone, held it for a moment, then turned it off. This wasn't revenge. I didn't destroy anything. I simply stepped away and let the system follow the rules it was built on. I didn't walk away from that company with anger. I walked away with clarity, looking back. This experience taught me lessons I wish more people understood earlier in their careers. First, never underestimate your own value just because others fail to see it. I spent years quietly holding things together, and it took one careless decision for everything to unravel. Your work matters even when it's invisible. Second, knowledge is power, but undocumented knowledge is risk. I became the system's backbone, but also its single point of failure. If something depends entirely on you, that's not just strength, it's a warning. Third, respect isn't optional in leadership. Ryan didn't fail because he lacked skills. He failed because he lacked understanding and humility. When leaders stop listening, they start losing control. And you? What about you? Did this story remind you of something you've experienced? Or maybe a lesson you've learned the hard way? I'd genuinely love to hear your thoughts. Share them in the comments so we can learn from each other. If this story gave you even a small insight or perspective, consider subscribing, liking, and sharing it with someone who might need it. You're not just watching, you're part of a community that values growth, awareness, and real stories that matter.
Welcome to Boardroom Revenge Stories, a channel focused on workplace conflict, corporate betrayal, power struggles, and quiet justice. Our stories follow a structured workflow to deliver a consistent, immersive experience. We start by analyzing real discussions on Reddit, Facebook, Quora, and blogs. Next, we craft original scripts using AI tools like ChatGPT. We then use 11 Labs to transform text into high-quality voice and edit everything in CapCut for a smooth, cinematic finish. Thumbnails are designed with Canva, and every video is carefully reviewed before release. These stories go beyond entertainment, revealing how power truly works and how justice quietly unfolds.